Thank you all for having me today. Today I'm going to be sharing a story of strength. What do you picture when you picture strength? Is it the sculpted physique of an athlete or the convictions of a civil rights leader? To me, when faced with this question, I picture this. This is my grandmother, Michelle Cooke, and she is the epitome of strength in my eyes. To have met her was to be overwhelmed by strength, but it wasn't strength that came out in a single moment. Rather, it was the way she lived her life, with her convictions and devotions in mind. This is her story. Michelle Cooke was born July 22nd, 1922, in France. Her first 2 years of life were idyllic until her mother died of tuberculosis when she was 5. Now, at this point, her father quickly remarried upon her stepmother's condition that Mamine and her younger brother be sent away to live with their maternal grandmother in the north of France. This is where she spent her first 18 years. That all changed when the Nazis began their invasion of France at the start of World War II. Now, at this point, her father was working in the French government in Paris, and he sent for Mamine and her younger brother to come join him in the city. But this all came to an end, or I should say, took a different path when he didn't come home one night. It turns out that he had been assassinated leaving a government building. So there Mamine was, 18 years old, her country's being invaded, she's just been orphaned, and she goes in to identify her dead father's body. And it was there that the police informed her that if she wanted to live, she needed to flee the city immediately. So Mamine, just 18, went home to her father's apartment, gathered her younger brother, all their valuables, and got in a car. Now the issue was neither of them knew how to drive. But they figured it out, and they somehow made their way south towards the free part of France, escaping the invading army and coming with it hope of tomorrow. So when they got to the south of France, they needed an action plan. They needed somewhere to stay. They remembered that their stepmother, all those years before, had actually moved to the south of France. Now, when they got there, they asked her to stay, but she rejected them. Food rationing was already rampant, and they couldn't afford to feed the mouths that they already were living in the house. So with nowhere left to turn, they headed back north to her maternal grandmother's home. Now, her maternal grandmother's home was in the Nazi-occupied region of France. And at this point, the Nazis were using many of the larger homes in the region to board their soldiers. So with the soldiers staying in the house had a secondary purpose as well. It was a key part of the French resistance. So the French resistance used the house not only as a meeting place, but also as a place to hide Allied pilots who'd been shot down doing missions over France. So during this time, if an Allied pilot was shot down over France, many times the French people would rush to the plane. If they could get there before the Nazis' patrols, they would go hide these pilots in a series of houses. These pilots were then ushered in a kind of underground railroad towards the English Channel and back to the safety of England. My grandmother's home was one of these places. So every night after dinner, with the Nazis soldiers staying in the house, Mamine would quietly exit out the back door. As the soldiers finished their dinner, she'd leave the house with 2 buckets. And one of these buckets was pig slop, and the other was food for soldiers, food for Allied pilots staying just a couple hundred feet away in a barn. She did this right under the noses of the soldiers staying in the house for months. But at one point, a Nazi soldier staying in the home was smoking a cigarette outside. As Mamine left, he noticed, and he walked up to her. He demanded to see what was in the bucket. In that moment, my grandmother truly believed that her life was over. And yet, as he reached, he grabbed the top off the bucket, and he chose the bucket with pig slop in it. And he never checked the other bucket. And so while the pigs got extra food that night, that wasn't the case for nights to come. As night after night, for months, for years, right under the noses of the oppressor staying in the home, she went outside, delivering food and information to the pilots staying in the barn. Another role she played in the French resistance was helping to deliver pilots from her grandmother's home in the surrounding area closer to the channel. A lot of times this was also accompanied by key information to the Allied forces. When she was given a mission, the resistance would give her a set of instructions. These might be something like, when you pull into the next town, you'll see a woman with a baguette. This woman will drop 2 letters, and this is your sign that she's your point of contact. My grandmother would then deliver the information to the pilot without ever speaking a word to this person. The 2 resistance fighters were never to speak, as if they were caught, they would inevitably be tortured. And the only way they could survive was if they hadn't given any information about the other person to the other points of contact. So she did this time and time again. When it was time for her to deliver a pilot, she'd have them dress in French countryside garb and have them follow behind her on bicycle. She'd ride to the next towns over, oftentimes through Nazi roadblocks, and having to talk her way through, as the Allied pilots oftentimes didn't speak French. And she'd lead these pilots through back roads, through roadblocks, until she'd reached the point where she was to drop them off. They would then continue their journey onward, and Mamine would ride back. It was on these rides back that she really had the chance to think about the risk she was taking. She wasn't only potentially sacrificing her own life, but those of her families, and not only of her families, but those that lived near them. But yet, she never wavered. She consistently delivered information to Allied sources and would eventually lead hundreds of soldiers to safety. Not only from actually delivering them to the point, but also via the information she was delivering. Now, after the war, my grandmother decided she needed to change. She ended up moving to Paris and ended up reconnecting with her stepmother, who had also moved there at the time. Now, I don't want to spoil what happens next, but her stepmother was renting a room to a young American soldier, and I do share a name with this soldier, so you can guess that the 2 fell in love. And following the war, Mamine moved to Los Angeles with my grandfather. When it was time for her to actually come over to the States, she was put on a large ship. The ship was full of hundreds of women, all French women that had taken American soldiers as husbands. On this ship, they spent weeks crossing the Atlantic. They had so many feelings. They felt a little, not jealous, but they felt incredibly fortunate to be coming to the States, but they also felt like they were leaving their family and their friends and their country after this incredibly life-altering experience. Those hundreds of women, over 70% of them ended up returning to France in just 5 years after coming to the States. But not my grandmother. She built a life in the States, would eventually raise 4 children, including my father, with my grandfather, and would become a culinary instructor where she would teach Americans about the French culture through food. My grandmother lived a tremendous life, but it was only at the end of it that she and I were able to connect. Through high school and throughout college, she and I would meet for weekly lunches. During these lunches, she would talk about everything under the sun. She'd talk about politics, the latest gossip at the retirement home. She loved sports. Favorite player was LeBron. Talked a lot about LeBron. But we'd also talk about her stories, what she went through, and really her philosophy on life itself. My grandmother believed that in each and every one of us, there's a core strength. She described it as a quiet strength. She said that in this quiet strength is something of a compass. This compass allows us to choose right from wrong, good from evil, but it also allows us to rise up in our darkest moments and overcome challenges that we never thought we could. If she were here today, she'd look around this room and see so many bright people with so many bright futures ahead of you. Her ask of each and every one of you would be in your darkest moments, in your toughest times, look inward, and you'll find strength that you never knew you had. It might lie dormant now, but in your times of turmoil, you'll find the ability to overcome any challenge you can. It'll guide you where to go and how to get there. I can't wait to see all you're going to accomplish, as I know my grandmother would as well. Thank you.